This is section 12.4. Thank you, Frank. Page 483 is where we're going to start. I'm doing two examples. Example A and example B of this section, and then 12.5, and I'm doing example A at least, and maybe B. So page 483, we're looking at ordinary general annuities, finding the term N, and 12.4a says what period of time is required for $125 deposited at the end of the month at 11% compounded quarterly to grow to $15,000. So we know where it's an N, why? Because it's saying what? Period of time. So we know we're solving for N. And how do we know that it's a general annuity? Does the payment equal the compounding period? No. The payment is for the end of each month, but the compounding is quarterly. So we know it's a general annuity. And do we have, what's the $15,000? Is it a present value or a future value? Do we already have the $15,000? No. Thank you for your audience participation. 15,000. We don't have the 15,000. So because we don't have it right now, it's a future value. So that we know that we're looking for the future value of this. So sorry, that we have the future value. So N equals the log of, and I'm reading about in the middle of page 483, of the future value times P, and again we have to figure out P because our compounding doesn't match our payments, and our payment divided by payment plus 1. So this should look pretty familiar because we worked with this formula before when we were looking for N. The only difference is that the P was an I. So same formula. And then we also find our log of 1 plus P. So that's our formula that we need to figure out, and the formula that I will have for you for your quiz and test. And so let's work out our C. C is our compounding divided by how it's paid, our payment. So our compounding we said was quarterly in this example, and our payment is monthly. So it's 4 over 12 or 1/3 or 0.3 repeating. And then we have our P is, we have to work out P which is 1 plus I to the C minus 1. So we have to figure out I, and I should have done that beforehand. I equals 11% divided by 4. So the 11% divided by 4 is 2.75%. So our P is 1.0275 to the 1/3 or 0.3 repeating. Make sure that you keep those decimals and make sure you just don't use 0.3. And so we find P is 0.009084. And so we're going to use that to substitute in for our N. And what is our N? N is our term in years. Oh, sorry. Why can't we figure out our N?
We don't know.
Because we don't know. That's what we're solving. Oh, okay. Don't panic if you can't find your term in years, because that's what you may be looking for. Recorded for all posterity. All right, log of future value. We do know that our 15,000 is future value. We're going to multiply it by 0.009084. Our payment is $125 minus 1. It's a lot of calculations, but once you figure those out, it's not that difficult to take that log. So we figure out our 15,000. 15,000 times 0.009084 divided by our payment of 125 minus 1. And so we have our log. We're going to find our log of 0.09008. And I plus 1, sorry, plus 1, divided by our log of 1.009084. And so we have, when we work all that out, and on the top of page 484, we get n equals 81.522, and so on, 40. What does this mean? What is n? What is n? How is it paid? How is this paid? Is it paid quarterly or is it paid monthly? Those are our only two options. Monthly. So that is months, right? Again, ask yourself, remember for this section it's always term in years times how it's paid. And so when you're solving for n, it's always how it's paid. Remember your payment is how it's paid per month. That's your n. So we would round this off to 82 months. And if you wanted to divide it into 12 and give me years, that's fine. It said, what's the period of time? If it said how many years, then you would have to divide it by 12. But it just said the period of time. So go with that and go with just months would be fine. Questions? All right, let's try B. An example B. And example B is a slightly different example, obviously. A business valued at $96,000 is bought for a down payment of 25% and payments of $4,000 at the end of every 3 months. If interest is 9% compounded monthly, for how long will payments have to be made? So we know it's N because it's for how long, so they're asking us for how long will payments have to be made. Do we have a present value or do we have a future value?
Present.
Present. How do you know it's present? What gave it away? Other than it's in the section that says present value. Pardon? What a business valued at $96,000 is bought. So we know, and there was a mortgage, or it didn't say mortgage, but there's a down payment and then payments of $4,000. So the $96,000 was given to the person who wanted to buy this business, and then they're going to pay it back. So the $96,000 is a present value, and it's not $96,000. Are they financing the entire $96,000? No. How do we know that? There's a down payment. So if they've given a down payment, they don't have to repay that down payment again. So we take 25% off, and they've actually paid $24,000 down, leaving $72,000 that they have to pay back. All right, so they've already paid $24,000. So the present value that we're going to deal with is the $72,000. Read those questions carefully when they give you a down payment. So the present value for our log of 1 minus, and we're taking the present value times our P divided by payment. And this is a minus. That's the only difference on there. Remember, when you're working with this, you're going to get a log that's less than 1, which will give you a negative, and with that negative, it'll just cancel out. So then you can work out your ends. So first thing we do is our C, because I noticed when I was reading, the payments of $4,000 are at the end of every 3 months. Well, that's paid as quarterly then, but how is it compounded? Monthly. So the compounding and payments don't match. So C equals 3. Let's do I is 9% divided by 12, so 0.75%. So our P equals 1.0075 to the third minus 1. And when we work that out, that's 0.022669. Then you can store that when you're working that out, store that in your calculator's memory. And that way you don't have to keep putting those digits in. More likelihood of making a mistake. All right, so we're finding a log of 1 minus, and we said the present value was 72,000 because that's actually what they borrowed, not the full 96,000. We're going to multiply it by 0.22669, and we're going to divide that product by the 4,000. What is our, when we solve for n, what will n be in? Will n be monthly, will be months or quarters? How is it paid? How is that payment? That's 4,000 per every 3 months, which is quarters. So our n is going to be in quarters. Whatever number we get, those are the numbers of quarters. Keep that in mind when you're going through. This is the toughest part of this whole question, is remembering what you have for n at the end. Because it's not enough just to give me 81.5. I want to see how, what does that 81.5 mean? Is that days, weeks, months, quarters, every 6 months, half years, or years? So make sure that you put that in. Okay, so once we figure this out, and it's log minus log of 1.022669, and once we figure actually do the calculation, 72,000 times point, and I did it already, 0.022669 divided by 4,000, change the sign on the answer, plus 1. So I have log of 0.591958, and then I still have a minus log of 1.022669. And take a log of that, and I get a minus 0.524319593. I'm going to certainly store that. And then 1.022669, and take a log of that, 0.022415.876, and that's minus. And when I actually do those calculations and find I have n equals 23.390604 quarters. And it did say for how long will payments have to be made. So the answer is 24 quarters. If I wanted to know how many years that would be, how many years is it?
6.
Yeah, divided by 4, 6 years. Either answer would be fine, as long as you tell me, give me whether it's quarters or years. Questions on that? All right, let's take a look at 12.5. 12.5 can only be done with a business calculator. There is a way to do it longhand, and if you're that interested, you can go on to the MathXL site, which is in this, and find it, but it'll take you forever to go through them. So use your calculator. What is the one thing you have to remember with your calculator when you're doing these questions? Clear your time value of money is number 1. And then the only difference between all the other questions we've done and these questions is what?
The fact that C and P are going to be different.
C and P are different, so when you put in your PY, CY has to be entered differently as well. And these will always be different. So when you enter your PY, when you go second function PY and you come up with PY and we see 12.5A on page 488 says that, what's my PY? Interest at the end of each month. So I'm going to put 12 and I'm going to put enter. I'm going to move my arrows down 1 so I can see CY. My CY is what for A? Pardon? 2, semi-annually. So I enter 2, and I can scroll up again just to make sure my 12 stays, but it always does, as long as you've entered those separately. So as long as I've done that, then I can do everything else the same. I can enter Irena deposited 150, well, I know 150, whoop, second quit, 150 minus is going to be my payment. In a savings account at the end of each month for 60 months, if the accumulated value of the deposits was $10,000 and interest was compounded semi-annually, what was the nominal annual rate of interest? What is the $10,000? Did she have it when she started out? No. She only had it after she made all those deposits, so 60 deposits, all the way through of $150. Then she had $10,000. So $10,000 is actual future value. What's present value? There isn't one, so we have to put a number in. So it's going to be 0 is going to be present value. What's our N? This one's a trick question in that way. It already gives you the N. If it had said she did this for 5 years, and if she had done it for 5 years, every month for 5 years, you would have said 60. Well, it's telling you it's 60 months. So for N is 60, and then you go compute IY, and you should be getting something like 4.255%. And if you said 4.3% or 4.26%, compounded how? Compounded. How are we compounding? Remember IY or J, compounded semi-annually. You need those two parts in order to answer these questions. Not just the number, but also how it's compounded. And the question says, an interest was compounded semi-annually. So you go 4.255% compounded semi-annually, and that's your answer for that. If on a test or quiz, and I've seen a couple of people do this, and I think it's a good idea, if you want to put down, because really these questions are either right or wrong, but if you say future value equals $10,000, at least I know that you know that it's future value. And then if you get something else wrong in the question, if you put the N wrong or whatever, well, at least you'll get a mark or two, because I know that you've got your future value correct. So if you want to put future value as 10,000 and N equals 60, and then you make a mistake, you forget to clear it, you forget to do something, then at least it gives you a couple of marks. So 12.5b, compute the nominal annual rate of interest compounded monthly, at which $500 paid at the end of every 3 months for 10 years will eliminate a debt of $16,000. What is the $16,000? Is it future value or present value? $16,000. You have a debt of $16,000. It's a present value. The debt must have mean at some point you received $16,000, either for a car, a house, a student loan, whatever. It's a debt of $16,000. Maybe you took a really great vacation, but you have a debt of $16,000 to get away from all the snow. It's present value. Now you're paying it back, and you're paying this back, this $16,000 present value, at an interest rate compounded monthly. You're paying the $500 at the end of every 3 months. So when you clear your time value of money first, then you go into second function in PY. How are you paying this? It's being paid every 3 months, so that's going to be quarter. Then how is it compounded? Compounded monthly. So you enter your 12, and then you quit. Your future value is 0. Your payment is $500 with a minus sign in front of it. 16,000 is your present value. What's your N? Every 3 months for 10 years. 40 quarterly for 10 years. The 10 times 4, that's your N, and then you compute your IY, and you get 4.5282, whatever. 4.5% is fine, 4.53% is fine, as long as you have compounded monthly at the end. Write any of those answers. Not just 4 though. Give me at least 1 or 2 decimal points after it. Questions about that? Done exactly the same way, the only difference is that our CY and our PY are different and you have to enter those. All right, I will ask my director to turn off and cut.